Call this meeting to order. City Council Workshop, September 3rd, 2024, 6 p.m. We'll go ahead and do a flag salute. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have everybody here other than Ethan, who his wife's gonna probably have her baby today, or did have her baby, one of the two, but he is excused. So we'll, but other than that, reports, correspondence, and discussion, our strategic plan discussion.
Hey, Matt, are you starting us off?
He was hoping for a short little intro.
Carla, give us an intro.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you an intro.
I'm not.
So-
over here.
After the last couple of conversations about all the stuff that's going on, there was some interest in the council of gaining a better understanding of kind of where we're at, where we're going, and where do we want to go. And so we're in the process of engaging Johnson Economics and MAKE Planning to do our our economic opportunities analysis. So we reached out to them to see if they could also help us with the strategic planning effort. So they put together a scope. We've engaged them to do that. Tonight, we're kicking that off. We're gonna do, this is gonna be about a 3-month long process. Matt's gonna talk a little bit about it. So the two gentlemen in the two corners there, Matt Hasty, whose camera's on, and then Brendan Buckley, who, if we have questions for him on the economic side, will chime in. As we get started, I do want to share, I'm just gonna pass these around, please each take one. This is the 2-pager that they put together very quickly for us to kind of kick off this process. It's 2-sided, English and Spanish. And this is kind of our initial outreach to people. We're going to continue to use this, and they're going to continue to work on the products as we reach out to our community and begin to ask questions. So anyway, Matt, unless there's something else you think I need to say, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. That sounds great. Can everybody hear me okay? Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on the screen tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I'm going to share my screen and share a very brief PowerPoint presentation. So let me give that a shot. Oh, I am not. I think I need to have somebody allow me to share. Maybe
You should be able to now, Matt.
Okay.
Try again.
I will try again. Perfect. Thank you. Yes. All right. So again, this will be very brief, and just kind of give you a flavor of, what we're proposing as part of this process, and then just see what kind of questions you have. We have some questions for you, at least one for tonight, and then others to sort of think about as we move forward. So the goals of this strategic planning process really, as Carla said, to kind of understand what people want to see in the future in Boardman, chart the city's future direction, really hear from and talk to as many folks in the community as we can. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, just in terms of, who we're hoping some of the audiences and participants are for this process, and really just understand, again, what people care about. What are their hopes, dreams, concerns? Are they concerned about growth? Are they excited about growth? What aspects of that are they concerned or excited about? And ultimately come out of this kind of initial process with a strategic planning framework for the city, a set of basically probably a vision or value statement, a set of overarching goals, and use those to help guide some of the future detailed planning efforts that y'all have been talking about in terms of housing planning for economic development in the community, parks, transportation, et cetera. You've got a number of things on the horizon, and we're hoping this helps sort of set the stage for those future planning efforts. It won't replace the more kind of specific and detailed goals and policies in those processes, but it'll hopefully give you kind of a strategic framework for those efforts. So those are the goals of this process. Some of the things that we are going to help you all with as part of this process. The first one is do some work on a logo for the process and the strategic planning effort itself. That needs to sync up with your city logo, and any other kind of guidelines you have or how you communicate with folks. But also it should be something that people recognize when we're talking to them about the strategic planning process. And so when they see materials associated with it, they go, oh yeah, that's what we're talking about here. So that putting together materials that your staff can use in meeting with people and groups out there on the ground. We're anticipating having smaller group and one-on-one meetings, including potentially with members of the council. We can talk about that a little more later. Some kind of community survey to get at people's, again, what they're concerned and excited about, what they want to see in the future. That survey likely will be conducted both online, but also potentially on paper or out, at community gathering places using either paper or laptops or tablets. We want to be as kind of flexible as we can in doing that. And I will say that a fair bit of the work will be done by your city staff. Our firm, MIG, will help prepare you all for that and guide it and give you the tools to do the work. But we don't want you to have to pay us a lot of money to come out to Boardman and do all that work. So we're going to provide as much support as we can. And then ultimately summarize what y'all are hearing and what we're hearing from people about the things that we're asking them about. So preparing a summary of what we're hearing and a set of potential, again, strategic planning goals and a framework for future planning efforts. I said a moment ago, we want to talk to and hear from as many folks as we can in the community, folks who own and work in local businesses, partner government agencies or nonprofits, members of the Latino community, faith-based organizations, developers, builders, folks in the real estate community, just to, again, understand conditions and desires out there. And then, of course, city boards and commissions, you all, the Planning Commission, other official city groups. So that's, and you all can tell us who else, needs to be at the table or in the room for these conversations. But those are at least some initial ideas from us. So I said this would be a brief presentation, and this is my last slide, so it's pretty short. I think the questions for you all tonight or as we move forward, one, let us know if you have questions for me or Carla or Brandon, but we want to get a sense of, from what you've seen and heard tonight so far, do you generally support this? Does this make sense to you all? Do you have questions about it? And then moving forward, from the council, we also want to understand, what are your goals for the future of Boardman, how it grows, where it grows, what kind of growth you see, what are your concerns about that? Again, who needs to be involved in the conversation? If you have thoughts about that tonight, that would be great. What else do we need to know moving forward? This is not the last time we'll talk to you about these things, but if you have, and I know we only have a certain amount of time tonight because you've got another presentation in this work session, but kind of any of those things you can tell us tonight is great. And then we're happy to kind of sit down and talk to you one-on-one in the next few weeks about these same questions. So I am going to stop talking and just see if you all have any questions for me or Carla or Brandon or Brendan, if you have questions about economic development. So thank you.
All right, who has some questions or comments?
There's got to be at least one question in the room.
So does this process include ways to keep the funding for, or the economic development required to make the projects and ideas come to fruition, or
The
just
strategic planning piece, no.
So it's just an idea project.
Right, the strategic planning piece is really kind of the front end, overarching, what is the vision? Where are we headed? Where are we at? Where are we going? How do we want to get there? Capturing that sense from the broader community, more voices answering that question.
Should we? Sorry. Go ahead.
when we get into the more specific, like when we do the TSP update, or we do the EOA, the employment, economic opportunities analysis, those types of things. In those types of plans, there's usually a funding chapter that talks about, so the TSP is the easiest one to talk about this on. It'll say, these are all the projects you need to do. Oh, and here's the myriad ways you can fund those types of things. Does that kind of get to what you're looking for, Brenda?
It does, because I mean, everybody can make a list, well, maybe not anybody, but we could make a list of ideas, but then where do we go from there?
Right.
And then it could feed into the CIP if something requires that.
Right.
Then that would be-
We fully anticipate that the CIP by April, as we start moving through all of this, certainly by April, probably by April, because we need it for the next budget cycle. We'll probably have some significant changes to the CIP, just based on what we know. We're already gonna be engaging in conversations. We won't have a complete TSP by then, but we should have some ideas of what some of those projects might be and can begin informing the CIP.
Should we include, schools and possibly students? I mean,
Right, on some of the projects, we are doing that. So on the Parks Master Plan, we're gonna reach out to the school district for a student representative on that particular one. In most of the larger projects that we're doing, so on all of the specific planning projects that we're doing, there is all of them have been, we've told all of the contractors that we want a heavy engagement component. And most of them have some outreach to either a particular grade or engage the school in some way.
And Matt, that brings up a good point. I mean, we have done quite a bit of community, like outreach with the youth. Is that something that we could, I know sometimes the school district gets a little finicky of what we can send out, but if it is specifically to student input and what you'd like to see, can we have a piece where we student questionnaire?
Yeah, I personally think that would be great. We often engage schools and school districts and young people in these kinds of processes. So if there's an opportunity to do that, and there are activities or newsletters or whatever, you can work with the school district to help you get out the door. Or if, there's opportunities to sit down with kids in the school and get a sense, hey, what's important to them? I mean, they're really the future, hopefully, residents and community members there. So I think that's a great idea. I think we could definitely talk about that. And as you say, sometimes they're kind of options for plugging things into a curriculum or a set of activities can be challenging if it hasn't been planned out in advance. But if there's opportunities to do that, I think it would be great. So.
Cool. Good.
Everything. Richard,
no, that was it.
anybody else have anything?
Well, I guess now that we brought up schools, it makes me think. You're gonna have a number of meetings about the schools between now and
Yes.
election day. So are you going to try to,
Take back.
yeah, somehow?
Yep.
Because this,
And like he said, a lot of it's gonna be on the boots. It's not gonna be like, hey, we're gonna send out an online survey and hey, respond. When we were in the schools, you hardly ever got anything back. It is going out to the events. And like we've shared, we are working on getting a Latino outreach that will go specifically and help with all of this stuff. So everything, when he talks about the strategic planning, it also is gonna incorporate the economic opportunity. You're gonna talk about the parks thing. We're gonna talk about the comp plan. And it's gonna be all under this one umbrella. So we're not gonna keep going saying, hey, we're now talking about parks or blah, blah. It's that brand. It's like, it's all incorporated. And it really is a very lengthy process. The TSP, 15 months or whatever.
15 to 18 months.
Yeah. So it will all be under this brand, this logo that he's talking about. And that does bring up, so with the CIP, we definitely, when we created it, it was a great start. It's a good 5-year plan. We want to stretch this and even look at 20 years. anything that we have connected in the CIP helps with our other programs and SDCs and whatnot. And this, again, the things that we're gonna do will feed into the CIP and create a bigger, a broader look compared to just a 5-year plan as well. So that's gonna be something. And that will also, this goes into the committee, so strategic plan won't necessarily have a committee because it's everybody, but the EOA is gonna need a committee member. The parks is gonna need a committee member. The community development is gonna need a committee member. And
All of them, they will all have at least one representative from the city council on it,
Yes.
all of our PACs will.
and TSP. So be thinking about it. Assignments, and tonight we're talking about making a TSP assignment.
Well, and Richard, you already indicated you wanted to be on the Parks Master
Mhm.
Plan Advisory Committee, so I've got your name on that list.
Perfect.
Yep. Any other questions for Matt?
I don't think so. I was just thinking, the goals for future community growth, that's what we're looking at getting from the input.
Yep.
So you're gonna have extreme to extreme. And then it's gonna be our job as the council to figure out where we want to go from that input.
Correct. So it really is, I look at this as like for budget purposes, the CIP is great. It's laid out there. I think it does the same thing, strategic planning. There you go. I mean, obviously, it's not gonna be, there's still gonna be a wide variety, but it's gonna give us some information. So,
Well, it might even give us some things to even think about that we haven't even. Correct.
yeah, yep. That's
So I could go for this. Not that I wanna be on another committee, but. But I guess that's. What we're gonna get to do.
And this one isn't necessarily committee, this is more the input, but when we have the questionnaires and the surveys, it's gonna be great if you guys can be able to have those conversations within your, groups and organizations that you affiliate with, and like you said, in order to save us money, that's a way that we can do that, is we'll do ground level work and going to those different community events and piggybacking on the bond meetings and things like that, so.
Well, okay, so when Carl said, okay, we're gonna redo the TSP and every other thing.
Yep.
Is this getting ahead of doing that work? Or are we gonna say, oh, we need to do that, and we'll just put a notch in there, and then in a couple of years, we'll fill that notch?
So my hope, Karen, and that's really where my focus is gonna be over the next 24 months. Is making sure that as we have Johnson Economics do the EOA and Mig do the housing needs analysis and Shapiro Didway do the Parks Master Plan and Kittelson's doing the TSP, and we still need to select the contractor for the development code and comp plan update. My role is to make sure that they all sync. But what I think we get out of this initial front end strategic planning is the guide, we're gonna shoot the arrow here and it's gonna hit something, it's gonna hit a target. And that's the target. Everything is gonna work towards that same target. So as we do the TSP, the objective is this. As we do the EOA, as we do the HNA, the Parks Master Plan, they all are moving towards this. Again, it's not the same end result because they're obviously doing different things, but they're moving towards the same vision that the strategic plan is supposed to help you as the council formulate so that we can say to our community going forward, this is what Boardman, if you can think of it as a Boardman 2044 kind of objective. Where are we going in the next 20 years? What does Boardman look like 20 years from now? And what do we need to do to get there? And all of the rest of these plans, well, they have to meet certain requirements for the state or for, there's all these check boxes we have to do. That doesn't mean that the end result can't continue to inform what our objective is for 2044. Does that make sense? I hope so.
We'll just go out and get to work.
Cool. Anybody else have anything? Yes,
You allowed conversation in your workshop?
probably not supposed to. What do you have to say?
I think it's great to do strategic planning. I was a little surprised last week, and I called Carla. I was a little surprised to see all of the lots on Front Street listed for sale by a realtor without that strategic plan in place. I would suggest not to sell those lots until you have done the research to decide what your vision is for what you want there. Because as it sits right now, you've got a lot for sale with a realtor. If she comes with a price, how are you gonna turn it down?
You don't accept it?
Why list her for sale then?
But they have been surplus forever.
It doesn't mean you have to advertise them with a realtor for sale. Just means that you. In my experience, what I would do is probably figure out what kind of businesses you want and go target them.
I mean, yes, that definitely is. We know that we want amenities and that's been talked about for decades. So
Yes.
that's kind of getting the ball rolling and saying, okay, what amenities are when you come in? Right?
But to take that string of lots. And sell, you could sell the wrong one, and then you can't do the next project that comes to you. You just need to think about what the vision could be for those things. I was surprised.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, we already had interest in we kind of chased that person off. So what does that say about? You know. It could be 10 years. Those lots will still sit empty.
They're better empty than the wrong thing.
Well, I get that, but how long have we been saying that? In more than 40, 50 years? I mean, at some point, we have to move forward.
And so that's the purpose of the strategic plan is to get it. Give that information.
I think the one thing we don't have the capacity for within the city is that economic development, going out there and figuring out how to do what Lisa's talking about. Not that there's not an interest, I'm just not sure we have the capacity. And Fran and I have been talking about that. How do we build that capacity? Where does that actually happen? And how do we put that in? I think that could be a real outcome of the strategic planning process. I think one of the things that I think comes out of this conversation over the next 90 days, maybe the next 180 days is, or do we have the right people in the right places? And are we trying to do the right things as staff to facilitate what we want to accomplish in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? I think it could really create some interesting inputs into the next discussion around budget and a whole lot of other stuff. So, yeah, I appreciated Lisa's comments when she called and talked to me, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Brandon about that conversation yet. We'll certainly probably talk about it tomorrow. But it's something to think about. How should we be doing this strategically? Do we have the right capacity, the right people on the staff? And are we asking the real estate agents to do the right things for us too? I mean, what should the ask? I don't have those answers yet. I have a lot of questions. I don't know I have all the answers, but.
All right, thank you.
Very cool. Yep. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. We'll let you get to your other meeting.
All right. Thanks again for having me. Talk to
Yeah.
you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So the next part is the missing middle housing fund discussion.
There's Nate. Nate, do you have the ability to share do you have the PowerPoint on your screen, or do we need to have Amanda pull it up?
You're talking to me?
Yes, sorry, Nate.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. But if you're gonna drive, you might want to just do it. Here, I'm already doing it. Let's just have that. Okay.
Okay, So if you have it, Nate.
I do.
Okay, so those are the meetings that, what we've met thus far. Okay, I'll go to the next one. Those are the individuals that have been reached out to, had some kind of communication. I'll go to the next one. This information was what was shared, at the meeting. That 65,000, that is a very important number, because what's that, Nate?
That's your area median income for Morrow County. And so if you
Okay.
lined up all the people in the county in a line, the middle one would make that much money, about approximately. And when we
That's
talk
short.
about,
I don't know people. That number. Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then there's some, housing information and sales and what, again, all discussed in that meeting. Do you want to go to the next one?
yeah, the one thing to just note on here is, and it's highlighted in blue, and I know we stressed this at Let's Build Boardman, but the income range that we're really talking about is that middle piece. Affordable housing is a word that gets used a lot to talk about those making 80% and less. But the focus of this effort is this middle piece.
Okay, more of the key information that we talked about, and that was kind of in the initial meeting. The 250 units, that was when we met with Tillamook was there, and 3 Mile and school district,
Boardman Foods.
Boardman Foods.
Yep.
Okay, next one. Okay, and these are, do you want to just do a quick synopsis? This is what you found out, right, in your conversation?
Yeah, and actually start here at the bottom. You kind of know everybody we've talked to, and then it happened again with the 84 people at your event. You kind of know what you don't want, because some of it's already in your city. It's housing that is either deteriorating or is not maintained, typically as bad management. There's a challenge with growing so quick, not knowing your neighbors. And then, back to the presentation that just preceded this, the notion that there has to be a plan. There has to be a plan before you can actually say this goes here, that goes there. Green space is a critical desire of folks in your community. And then, this is what people said over and over again, is that you're proud of your city. You're very proud of where you live. And you want to have a shared community vision that everybody can get behind. Because it's important, whether that is your city, the amenities you all talk about, your public spaces, or your actual home. You want to be very, very proud of your home. In terms of, this community sense, housing shouldn't create more division or more barrier. It should lift everybody up and really build connections between you and your neighbors. One size does not fit all. One price does not fit all. Again and again, we heard from folks who said, my kids can't afford to buy the thing that I bought, even though they might make the same income or similar. There's no way that they could potentially afford to be here. And there's not as many places for seniors to go either. And a key piece that kept coming up again and again was I might not be able to afford the home that I bought in Boardman, even making what I can make now. And so having different price points and different products, different housing options was kind of what you all told us you wanted. And then the vicious cycle of amenities, we've talked about that quite a lot, but what comes first, the humans or the places to shop, or the places to take your kids, the restaurants, the things that you want. And then, there's a lot of a recognition of the change is already happening. So how do we shape it versus having it happen to us? How do we get ahead and actually do the planning work that Carla and Matt were referring to? So that the different folks that are good at building housing are doing that in service of your plan and not just reacting. And then this is just, you know, you've seen this before, all of you, but you know, you've done it once before, you reinvented your community. How do you do that again in a way that respects the culture that you've built, that respects the people that have been working so hard to make Boardman the success it is today? And then also enable tomorrow's seniors and leaders to educate families and welcome families here to grow your city in the best way that fits, again, your culture and the folks that have already done it. And then I always like to call out Mayor Kiefer for saying, we don't need to be the guinea pig. We can learn from who else has already done this. That's just a reminder of who helped launch the big day that we held. And then Brandon, you want to take over again, or do you want me to?
Yeah, so during that event, so 84 attendees, and they correct me if I'm wrong, so this is your 5th time doing it, right?
That's correct.
And events like this, and we were the largest, correct?
Yep, you are the current title holder for the largest event that we've helped host.
So in that session, if you'll go to the next one, this is what those 84 people came up with, okay? The ones that go specifically, so the zoning regulations, that is what we just talked about, that's what we're doing. The comprehension vision master plan, workforce housing, they talked about, again, strategic planning, addresses that. The revolving, pre-development loan fund, that is something that, you know, I'd like to discuss. The other one, the quarterly expo, that's being led by Tori. The CTE building, that's being led by Anna. And that framework, what was that last one?
Essentially, you have a lot of significant employers who have the biggest need, right? It's their challenge to hire and retain due to the high cost or inaccessibility of housing in your community. And so a lot of folks in the room were saying, well, let's let those employers put their money, their land, their clout, their technical expertise behind this effort. We shouldn't just be doing this for them. We should be doing this with them. They should be playing a leading role and putting their resources to work in the community to solve this challenge.
Perfect. So you can go to the next slide.
Before you leave that slide, I want to share that Boardman has recently decided for number one, improve accessibility to zoning and regulations. I kind of scratched my head about that for a little bit, but we were approached by a startup company. And we're one of 2 cities that they are working with to test out, to potentially deploy an AI tool. And I don't understand AI. I just know Skynet is real, right? I watched those Terminator movies and I know Skynet is real. So I'm a little nervous about AI, but Jillian Wildfire is one of the principals of this startup. And what they do is they use this AI logic they've loaded our development code and other components from how we regulate. And we are testing if somebody could come to our website and actually their website, we could lead them to that portal. And they would say, I want to build a fence. How do I do that in Boardman? And it literally throws back at them what is required. Or if I want to build a house in Boardman, it spits back at them specifically what is required. So I think we may have really hit a real opportunity to address number one before we get to number 2, because number 2 is what's going to take some time.
Is it technical, the spit back? Or is it just bare bones?
Isn't it like what Copilot or whatever that annoying thing is that comes on my computer that wants to continue my sentence when I'm
Well-
And then it answers, I mean, like if I'm
I
already
think it
looking at something,
scans,
it
it
gives me an
scans
answer.
your building codes and it pulls the
Yeah,
keywords
It's,
and then it brings it all together, so
Yeah,
that.
it's
usually-
doing targeted keyword searches and it uses an AI algorithm to
Yeah.
do that. Stephanie and I did a demo with them and we need to do some follow-up on that. It was pretty cool stuff. I will admit, I was moved. And yes, you could pass that on, Nathan.
There's some cool stuff that you can do with AI.
Yeah,
There's really some cool stuff.
it's pretty cool.
And just to trans,
Chris's a relative of Nathan's?
I have
Yeah.
no idea. Probably.
Uncommon last name.
It is an uncommon last name, yes.
for
Um,
transparency's sake, that's my ex. I have nothing to do with her company, but she's very, very smart. So we're introducing her to folks, but I truly have nothing to do with her company. But yes, we were married.
After the introduction, it's all, yeah, I was hesitant and, I've been really surprised by the product. So,
So yeah, next one. So now the question is, what do we do? Out of those 4 things, the first one we already planning on doing, that's in the works, that's going. The 3 and 4 are totally not us. One is going by the chamber, they're working on that. And then the CTE, again, is another entity. Those are all by themselves. We don't have anything to do with it. The number 2 is the one that is us. That is the city deciding to do that revolving fund. The thought that has been discussed is taking money from the next CREZ investment to put in this. We've been approached by UBC that they are very interested in participating. And again, they would participate in financial like that, connecting with the developer. Nate, do you want to say what you wanted to share about that?
Yeah, it might even be easier to think about this as a pre-development investment fund. You might determine that the best things to do with some of these dollars are to give modest grants, to get other housing entities or developers or innovators into your community. We have helped launch one of these, actually now 2, but the purpose is that the hardest dollars to access in any development project are the monies at the beginning. These are dollars usually for engineering or design studies. Sometimes it's to have someone test a new housing technology or a new housing product, or like to what Carla was saying before, bring a new software in that helps with your permitting or zoning that touches housing. These are all things you could choose to do with this type of a fund. Typically, you would end up with some sort of investment committee that makes recommendations. They're local, they're folks on this council probably, they're folks that are housing experts in your community. There are lots of different entities that manage these types of funds, different lenders that you can pick from or engage with. But fundamentally, you don't use the money once. You use it as many times as you can to fill that gap that is always present in workforce housing development. There's a reason less than 1% of all the housing created in America caters to that middle income. There's always a gap. There's no subsidy like affordable housing, and the rents and the mortgages are not high enough like market rates to justify the creation. So that's literally the name of our nonprofit, the Missing Middle Housing Fund. So a recommendation we would have is that you should launch some sort of a tool that encourages housing development in your community. UEC essentially said, we're not interested in talking about this forever, but if this really was to launch, we would consider matching the city's $1 million with our own. And then your state representative also was very curious about this. The loan fund that we helped launch in Yamhill County was created with dollars raised with the help of their state representative. And then if you have those dollars, you can basically make the rules about how they are spent, right? Can they be spent only on projects that are in accordance with the community vision or master plan? Are there income restrictions? Are there environmental concerns you care about? You can really pick whatever the rules are around the dollars that you would contribute to boosting housing in your community. And then like for number 3 or number 4, these dollars could contribute to those efforts. So you could say, yeah, we'd love to see 2 or 3 different ways to build housing on a piece of land we own. We'd love to see this type of housing on a piece of land a private individual owns, employer owns. You can then be a source of capital for catalyzing whatever land you want to catalyze in your community. So it's a flexible tool. Does that make sense, Brandon? Is that good?
Yeah, so that really is where we're at right now. And
All right, Karen, you have something to say?
No.
No, I thought maybe you were at them.
I do as soon as we're done with that and we get into putting stuff on the table.
I guess I'm not following you.
Well, I'll let him finish and then,
Oh, I thought maybe, oh.
that's it.
I think, yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Cause I think number 2, there's pros and cons to number 2, but I think that is definitely something to talk about. Decide what we want or don't want, or get it yay or nay. But I think that is something to definitely consider, especially if there are other entities that are willing to be a part of that. And I think the more partners we get to talk about, the better, the more information we can get on what is going to be the best fit for Boardman in regards to number 2. So I heard a lot of negative on number 2 at the meeting there. There were a lot of people that were not in favor of
what were their objections to that?
about the blueprints, and just there was, they didn't want to give the money up front to entities who may not come back.
Oh, that we fund their architect.
Yeah, and things like
engineers,
that.
And then they go off and never come back and.
And that was a con of what that it was, of not on this procedure, but I think there's,
But I think you have to write the papers up, right?
and that's the discussion on how we want to utilize this concept to where we don't sink from somebody doing something for somebody with where they don't bring back the
When we
product.
did that at the beginning, when we've done that before, we have a really good background in how to write the papers and what the papers should say. I mean,
Yeah, it's not like a gift. We're not giving them.
we're not getting
There's
some
been
things,
stipulations.
and yes, and
And that's why I
we
like
have
the
to start at the
discussion.
Beginning.
I mean, if UEC is wanting to be a partner in doing something like this, that's a major corporation.
Well,
Yeah.
what would be great about them is they have more, having their name affiliated with the contracts. It wouldn't be necessarily, I don't see that we need their money as much as it's really nice to have their name. You know, they do lots of advertising and they've got lots of connections that we don't have.
You're saying you don't want their money? I'm being sarcastic,
Well,
because you always like to take money.
I know it, and but money in this little tiny perspective isn't the issue. But it's getting it to the right people that want to come and take advantage of it.
And that was the conversation we were having, trying to have, being able to set that up or
See.
talk about that.
Yeah, because, you know, okay, I'm just gonna say what's on my mind about this. We're talking to people that bought houses in the 70s and 80s. Okay, I'll go out and build you a house like you bought in 70 or 80. They'll have very formica counters. They'll have the chintziest cabinets you've ever seen in your life. They probably will have your bathroom door swing out of the thing instead of in. I know because my house does that. You know, I can build that kind of a house probably for 250,000 or 220. we've got to decide if what I've worked 50 years to get, if these new people get to start there. 65,000 now. So, okay, in 70, what would 65,000 been in 1970? It would have been 1,200 a month. It would have been 35,000 if you were lucky. I mean, that's your total outside dream of making 35,000 a year in 70. So we've got to get somewhere in this perspective of wanting to do things. How nice, you know, it's like, do you go to Goodwill or do you go to, I don't know, whatever expensive place is?
The Nike outlet store.
It's Goodwill's the only one I don't know. But anyway, so.
Well, I think to your point, there are things that people who are just starting out on certain incomes have to take as compromises in order to have something.
Right.
For sure.
And it's the boat and the car.
Well, you know, I mean, everybody's in charge of their own finances, right? Make good decisions whether they can or not, but I think that the difference in my life, I didn't graduate from high school till 84, so I went out, 20-pound bag of potatoes was under $1. And I could live an entire month and feed 2 people for less than $100. So I think that in that world, me buying a $65,000 house on my minimum wage was probably a dream then too, right? But it wasn't like it wasn't doable. I just think that I was looking at that and saying, in 30 years, I'll have that house paid for. But if I went out to buy a house now in my nearly retired years, I couldn't pay for it before I'd be dead. Right? It's like a 30 or 40-year mortgage, and it's 1/3 to 2/3 of my income without putting away for retirement. So it's such a huge impact on me financially to just have a fraction of the American dream. Now, maybe I'm gonna end up with Formica on my countertops instead of porcelain or whatever they make them out of now.
Granite.
Whatever, whatever, yeah, it doesn't even matter, does it? But I just don't think that it's even available. And maybe I would be interested in something that didn't have to look just like the one you got.
Okay.
Or just like the one that Christina just bought 2 years ago. Or the one that Paul and we both got kind of some same thing 25 years ago. Maybe I can have something that looks different, has different shape, made out of different products.
I think it's also a matter of perspective too. I think some of us. And I'm not saying anybody in particular. It all depends on how you grew up too. I know how I grew up. I know what I lived in when I was a kid, and I know how my mom grew up, and it was way worse than I could ever imagine. And so to go from how she grew up to what they got when they were finally able to afford something. Right now, people would look at it and be very judgmental, oh, that's trash and that's garbage and stuff like that, but compared to what she started with is that's a mansion. So I think it's a matter of perspective. We talk about Formica tops. I have a Formica top
Me too.
and I chose that because that's what I can afford. to put it on.
I didn't mean, I
Oh,
don't,
What,
no,
all
and
I'm,
I'm not
all I'm
being- I'm not
saying is
insulted.
like,
We made
that's what I'm getting at, is that we make sacrifices. And sometimes we have something nice and sometimes we don't. We do what we can afford, and for a lot of people, depending on how you grew up, that's okay. That's
So,
what I'm getting at.
so I'm gonna go to another thing. When I first started in Boardman, I made like $28,000 a year with my bachelor's degree, which is sad, right? But my home was less than my annual salary. And now I make substantially more than $28,000 a year, but I couldn't buy a home at even twice the cost of my salary. I would have to I'd have to go beyond quadrupling it. So the disparity is that maybe you make 35,000, but your house didn't cost 350,000.
And potatoes.
The cost of things has gone up more than our wages and much faster.
Well,
And the housing is the biggest piece in my mind, because
and
it's
now
got
we're
the
building
biggest amount of.
houses that don't even have AC in them.
Yeah, because that
AC out
cuts
of
the
houses
cost,
now.
because it costs a cost so that you can buy a home for 300,000.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And I think my comment, Nathan, was just gonna be, I think the whole reason that we were looking at this is because we know that this is not available for the workforce, for the middle income. And part of the reason that we wanted to do this was to look at potentially new uses of artificial intelligence, of new technology that has advanced, that could potentially produce a product that is of good quality, but substantially lower.
Yes, yes.
Thanks.
When,
Thanks, Nathan. We'll continue this, but yeah, we gotta get ready for council. Any other?
That's everything? Yeah. All right, thank you. Meeting's adjourned.